The foods we eat are broken down into different categories. We've got protein, fats and carbohydrates. These are called the macronutrients. The vitamins and minerals they contain are called the micronutrients. In the next few videos, we're going to go into more detail about the individual macronutrients. It's important to understand that the foods that we eat contain varying levels of each of the macronutrients, from a couple to all three of the macronutrients, the proteins, fats, carbohydrates. For example, meat products contain only protein and fats, while plants can contain all three of the macronutrients. Earlier in the course, we said that survival is about energy, and in this chart, we can see that the macronutrients are in turn broken down further and perform different roles until they're all broken down into ATP, which is adenosine triphosphate, which is an organic compound that provides energy to drive many processes in living cells. All of the soft tissue in your body is made up of protein, your hair, nails and muscles, etc. All sources of protein are made up from organic compounds called amino acids. Now, these amino acids account for 75% of dry body weight, 95% of muscle and 100% of hormones, neurotransmitters and neuropeptides. These are all made up of amino acids. It's no wonder that we refer to them as the building blocks of life. Though there are about 20 different types of amino acids, 9 of them, which are collectively referred to as the essential amino acids, must be supplied by the foods that we eat, as the body cannot produce them on its own. Animal sources of protein contain all 9 essential amino acids. Protein is also present in other food groups, but the amino acid profile is incomplete. For this reason, vegans and vegetarians are often told to eat a wide variety of foods to ensure they consume all of the essential amino acids throughout the day. Not all protein sources are created equally. The ability of the body to break down and use this protein is called bioavailability. And as you can see in this chart, the foods listed are ranked from the highest to the lowest in their bioavailability.
Next we're on to fats. Now there's a little bit of information to get through here, but bear with me, this will all make sense towards the end and we give you guidelines. Fats, also known as triglycerides, are esters of 3 fatty acid chains and the alcohol glycerol. The term lipid, oil and fat are often confused. Lipid is the general term, though a lipid is not necessarily a triglyceride. I told you this was confusing. Although the fats to some extent contain both saturated and unsaturated fatty acids, they are generally categorized by levels of saturation. Let's start with monounsaturated fats. A single double bond in their fatty acid chain, they are generally liquid at room temperature. These are the things we need to remember. Liquid at room temperature. They're found in olive oil, flaxseed oil, sesame oil, sunflower oil, safflower oil, corn oil and peanut oil. Now notice that when we use the words found and not comprise of, this is important because these oils contain varying levels of monounsaturated fat. The rest is a mixture of polyunsaturated and saturated. So let's move on to polyunsaturated fats. Now these tend to be liquid even if you refrigerate them. And now the issue with polyunsaturated fats is that they tend to go rancid very easily, particularly when heated. Essential fatty acids. Now these are essential because the body can't produce them by itself and we must obtain them through food. Now specifically we're talking about omega-3 and omega-6 and it's important to keep a good ratio between the two. Omega-3 fatty acids are found in fish, algae, flax and nuts. There are 3 forms, ALA or flax, EPA and DHA, which is fish oils. Omega-3s aid circulation by naturally thinning the blood, fighting systemic inflammation and support brain function. Omega-6s are found in corn and other grains as well as grain-fed livestock. Now they serve important functions in the body, but due to the prevalence of grains and cheap cooking oils in the Western diet, we tend to eat far too many, which throws off the ratio between 3 and 6, omega-3 and omega-6. It's omega-3 that keeps omega-6 in check. Nowadays we have a real problem because what we have is a ratio of anywhere between 10 to 30 to 1 of omega-6 to omega-3. what we're ideally looking at maybe is a 4-to-1 ratio, but our ancestors probably had a 1-to-1 ratio. Saturated fats. Saturated fats are solid at room temperature and come in the form of butter, animal fats and tropical oils. The most important thing here is that they are highly stable. They don't have the same tendency towards rancidness as polyunsaturated fats, even when they're heated. Importantly, they also provide cholesterol. And finally, in fats, we have the category to avoid completely. These are hydrogenated fats, cis fats and trans fats. Now, these are regular vegetable fats that are chemically altered to make them behave more like saturated fats to be used in food manufacturing. It's like a Franken oil. The problem is that your body doesn't know how to deal with them properly. Studies have shown that the redistribution of fat tissues into the abdomen, even when total calories are controlled. This means that even when you diet, some of these fats are being stored in the abdomen. They're responsible also for inflammation and a whole host of other issues.
So now we'll move on to our third macronutrient, which is carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are the sugars, starches and fibres found in fruits, grains, vegetables and milk products. They're all called carbohydrates because at a chemical level they contain carbon, hydrogen and oxygen. Not all carbohydrate foods are created equally though. The glycemic index, the GI, is a relative ranking of carbohydrate in foods according to how they affect blood glucose levels. Carbohydrates with a low GI value, 55 or less, are more slowly digested, absorbed and metabolized and cause a lower and slower rise in blood glucose and therefore insulin levels. Our ancestral diet relied on vegetables, tubers and seasonal fruits for their carbohydrate content. Our modern diets rely heavily on grains, which for some people can cause inflammation and digestion issues, and although the source of energy, they are a poor source of nutrients. The human body stores energy in two ways, one as fat and two as carbohydrates called glycogen. While most of the energy stored in the body is stored as fat, glucose is so important to normal function that the liver and the muscle cells store a certain amount of it for times during which blood glucose levels begin to run low. Since the advent of agriculture, our carbohydrate consumption has increased significantly. And today, that increase has skyrocketed as our consumerist society gives us what we want whenever we want. Sugar, sugar, and more sugar. It's widely accepted that glucose is your body's preferred energy source. However, this isn't necessarily so. In the absence of adequate carbohydrates, your body will break down the fats, creating fatty acids, and glycerol, which are burned off in the liver in a process called beta oxidation. This process is called ketosis, and your brain functions exceptionally well on ketones. If you have ever missed a few meals or had a very low carbohydrate diet and/or exercised intensely, then you will have relied partly on ketones as fuel. Ketosis is a buzzword lately, and there are many advocates for a ketogenic diet. As we already mentioned, many of us rely on ketones without ever even realizing it. To be in full ketosis, however, takes a long time and severely limits, if not excludes completely, the consumption of carbohydrates. One thing we'd like to say here is that when engaging on any specific diet, we are very wary of anything that completely excludes other food groups. So there are two sides to dieting. We have two questions for you. Is it sustainable forever, and is it healthy? Always be mindful of this.
Apart from the proteins, fats and carbohydrates we consume, our macronutrients also contain the essential vitamins and minerals we need to support our health. Vitamins are necessary for energy production, immune function, blood clotting and other functions, whilst minerals play an important role in growth, bone health, fluid balance and many other processes. Pick up any multivitamin and mineral supplement and you will see what they call the RDA expressed as a percentage value on the label. RDA simply means recommended dietary allowance. While for some, vitamin supplementation might be needed, for most of us, a healthy, well-balanced diet featuring our favourite ancestral foods should more than cover our dietary allowances. A diet consisting mainly of processed foods, however, which unfortunately is very common today, can cause problems and lead to nutrient deficiency.